Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Daly. I spent 20 years with United Press International, most of it with the old UPI Radio Network. And my favorite assignment was going on the road producing and hosting American Montage. It was an hour-long weekly program. Now here's an edited version of one of those shows. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's American Montage, and we are again in one of my favorite cities, the southernmost city in the U.S., Key West, Florida. You drive down Highway 1, you get here, you can't go any farther, or you end up in the Gulf or the ocean, depending upon which side of the island you're on. We've covered the famous Fantasy Fest here, the lighthouse, all the great food, the history of the railroad, and this week we are stepping off the island, well, over a little causeway, to another island called Fleming Key, where you have to have very special permission to enter. For Fleming Key is a maximum security island. No, there are no prisoners here. There are animals. You see, if you're a cattle breeder, for example, and want to bring an animal in from a country that has, well, foot and mouth disease, you can't just introduce it into American livestock. You have to have it health tested first. May sound complicated, but it's an important part of safeguarding American agriculture. Dr. Richard Overton of the USDA was my host, and I asked him why go to all this trouble to build a facility like this.
The best thing I can tell you is that if we allowed or had a disease outbreak, a foreign animal disease outbreak in the United States, the cost to the industry, and this is the agricultural industry, would be tremendous, but the final cost to consumers, those that utilize agricultural products from even eggs and ham in the morning to a steak at night, or to the use of other materials that are made from animals, would be tremendous. The other consideration would be the suffering of the animals who would be infected with these diseases. Economic cost would be in the billions of dollars.
You're saying billions with a B?
Billions with a B, especially a disease like foot and mouth disease. Economic cost from several of the poultry diseases would also probably approach the billion-dollar mark too. The importance of protecting American agriculture, which is APHIS's purpose.
Let's define that. You used an acronym there, APHIS, which, if I still have it right, is the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service.
Yes, that's correct. This agency, which is part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture under the Marketing Division, its major service is to protect American agriculture, and in this case, we're looking at both the animal parts of the agency and also protection of plants. This includes programs like the boll weevil eradication program, aphid programs with the fruit fly programs.
I guess nationally, the one program, and unfortunately it got to be pretty controversial in some ways that people would know about, was or is the recurring medfly problem, particularly in California. I would assume that, I mentioned controversial here, you see demonstrators, don't spray here, don't do this, is the fact that in the case of medfly, the eradication process can be so complicated.
Yes, it can be. You're looking at different types of products to be used. Research is still going on for methods of control which do not utilize insecticides. But the decisions that are made both at a political level and also at the scientific level.
I think one of the things that amazes a lot of people when they come back to the States, for example, from overseas, they're prepared to see someone from customs and someone from immigration, but they're surprised quite often when there's someone from agriculture there. What are they looking for? I guess it varies from the country of origin, but what kinds of things, for example, if you're going to travel this spring to Europe? Let's start there. What kinds of things might you be asked if you fly back into JFK or Dulles Airport or Atlanta?
You'd be asked as to what kinds of fruits you were bringing back, whether you had food products which may contain, if they were improperly processed, viruses which could affect domestic livestock. The fruit themselves could contain viruses or insects which could cause problems for the industries here in the United States, agricultural industries.
Isn't it difficult, though, for some people because they're not thinking in terms of a disease that affects people, isn't there a temptation there to kind of discount the threat in a way? I mean, if you were telling people they were bringing something back in that might be harmful to them, that's one thing. But to try to explain to them that, you throw out the garbage, or the free-roaming deer in your area might eat it or something, I mean, that, for some people, particularly city dwellers, that's kind of a stretch of the imagination for them.
But unfortunately, Dennis, it's true. And the fact that in a lot of cases, garbage is utilized and fed to pigs, or the exposure of vegetable or fruit products to wildlife does exist, and because of that, we are ultimately all responsible, and ultimately it does affect each consumer.
Well, now give us an example. I was told, for example, that years ago, before supersonic aircraft, the Concorde, for example, or just regular jet airliners, many of these diseases would die off on the ship coming over. But now a person, I guess, could be on a farm in, I mentioned a country, Romania, or some country where there is a disease we don't have here, and be back on their own farm in Des Moines 8, 9, 10 hours later.
Well, that is a true problem. It's easy for those people that are both livestock owners and just tourists to go to a livestock facility or a nursery, and even bring back things on their clothing or on their shoes, and unwittingly, not intentionally, but unwittingly, at least put animals and plants at risk.
I have been told, and this is kind of a family show, but I'm going to use what you might say is the M word here, and that is when a person is in a feedlot, one of the mediums in which viruses can live is manure. And I read that there's a really tough problem with people who will tromp through a farm, for example, overseas, and then bring their boots back with them without ever cleaning them.
That is true, and especially true for poultry and livestock diseases.
Okay, so what we're going to do, you want to take everything but the microphone and put in the trash bag here?
That's right.
All right.
And
I wasn't really sure this was going to work, but of course it's a legal requirement. What I was not ready for was the procedure I would have to go through to make sure I didn't contaminate anything.
well, we're now going into the men's locker area where you're going to have to undress.
I what?
Yes, that's right.
You didn't tell me this.
Undress and into the shower area.
Really?
You know, all in the name of duty. That's right. The government requires you to well undress, take a complete shower, and put on a set of their coveralls on the way in, and then reverse it on the way out.
I'd like to introduce you to our importer. She is a doctor of veterinary medicine, and her name is Cheryl Tillman.
Hi, how are you? Where are you from?
Bend, Oregon. Who are you?
I'm Dennis Daly with United Press International, and I do a weekly one-hour show, and you notice they had to wrap up my tape recorder.
Well, that way you can get it out of quarantine. Yeah.
So I don't want to leave it down here. Tell us, if you will, these are the prettiest animals I think I've ever seen. You are importing these for what reason?
For breeding stock to North American breeders.
And is that becoming big business?
It has been for about 20 years.
And these animals are from where?
These animals are from Bolivia.
Boy, it's almost impossible to describe them. I was trying to figure out what they have the most lovable faces. They stare right at you, and they look so, well, I noticed they have pretty sharp-looking teeth, but they look so docile.
They're an extremely docile animal. Actually, we have 3 different types of camelids in this importation facility. We've got 2 types of alpacas, Wakaya and Surrey alpacas, and then we also have llamas here, too.
It's a wonderful, exciting, interesting place full of fun people and some really beautiful animals bound for farms around the U.S., but only after they are proven to be disease-free. And there you have it, another edited episode of one of the American Montage programs prepared for the UPI Radio Network back in the 1980s and 90s. I'm Dennis Daly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for going with me this week. And check YouTube for more American Montage programs.